Liverpool woke up today to the hum of expectation. For many, it felt as if politics had returned to the city's streets, not just as a headline or a poll number, but as something tangible. The annual Labour Party conference has often been a gathering of speeches and slogans, but this year it has been framed as a turning point for the United Kingdom itself. In the packed conference hall, cameras focused on the figure of Prime Minister Keir Starmer as he made his way to the podium. Applause filled the space, but it was not the relaxed applause of celebration. It was the charged applause of people anticipating a statement that could define the political direction of the country. Starmer has been in office for just 14 months, swept in on a landslide that promised renewal, yet the mood now is less triumphant and more urgent. When he finally began to speak, Starmer set the tone immediately. Britain, he declared, stands at a fork in the road. This was not a routine opening line, but a deliberate metaphor, conjuring the image of a nation forced to choose between two diverging paths, one of decency and renewal, the other of grievance and decline. His words echoed through the hall as he challenged not just his party, but the country itself to rise to a test that, in his own view, was as significant as the post-war rebuilding of Britain. For Starmer, this challenge is personal as much as political. He inherited a country weary from economic stagnation, decades of uneven growth, and a public frustrated by sluggish services and political scandals. He knows that despite his election victory, trust remains fragile. The reference to a fork in the road was his way of asking the nation to think in historical terms, to view today's moment not as one more partisan skirmish, but as a choice about Britain's very character. The speech itself was a mix of hope and realism. He admitted the path of renewal would be long and difficult. It would require decisions that would not be cost-free or easy, he said, and at times those decisions would be uncomfortable even for his own party. But at the end of that hard road, he promised, lay the vision of a fairer country, a land of dignity and respect. That framing, the idea that dignity and respect must be rebuilt, resonated with many in the audience. Britain's recent political history has been turbulent, years of debate over its place in Europe, sharp divisions in communities, and a sense among many citizens that the national story had drifted away from shared purpose. By invoking the values of decency and unity, Starmer tried to tap into a deeper longing for national coherence. Yet, while his words drew applause in Liverpool, they also reflected the pressures of a shifting political landscape. Polling data has shown that support for the hard-right Reform UK party has been rising sharply, appealing to voters frustrated by migration issues, by ongoing cost of living struggles, and by what they perceive as a lack of decisive leadership from the mainstream parties. Starmer's speech, therefore, was not only a statement of ideals, it was also a calculated attempt to set the terms of a contest with a growing political rival. Or journalists covering the event. The mood inside the hall felt markedly different from the optimistic tone that followed Labour's landslide victory in 2024. Gone were the rally-style celebrations. In their place was a more sombre, almost wartime-like sense of duty. Starmer's message was clear. Renewal would demand sacrifice, and some of that sacrifice would have to come from within Labour itself. This was perhaps the most striking element of his speech. It was not simply an attack on opponents, it was also a challenge to his own movement. He warned that decisions made in pursuit of national renewal would sometimes conflict with entrenched party positions. Such statements, delivered in front of party faithful, suggested a leader determined to prioritise long-term national recovery over short-term political comfort. Outside the conference venue, reactions were mixed. In Liverpool's cafes and on social media platforms, conversations reflected both hope and scepticism. Some praised the Prime Minister for speaking candidly about the nation's challenges and for evoking the spirit of collective effort that rebuilt Britain after the Second World War. Others dismissed the speech as polished rhetoric, lacking in concrete solutions for immediate problems, from housing shortages to underfunded hospitals. That tension between rhetoric and reality has become a defining theme of Starmer's tenure. He came into office promising pragmatic change, but delivering visible results within just over a year has proved difficult in the face of global economic headwinds and domestic political divides. His critics argue that promises of renewal mean little without swift policy implementation. His supporters counter that rebuilding trust in institutions and national spirit cannot be achieved overnight. In historical context, Starmer's reference to Britain's post-war reconstruction was telling. That era required extraordinary national effort, marked by rationing, rebuilding industries, and the founding of institutions like the National Health Service. By linking today's challenges to that moment, he sought to place his leadership in a narrative of perseverance and collective sacrifice. The comparison also underscored his message that the task ahead would be neither short nor simple. Among younger delegates at the conference, the speech sparked a degree of optimism. Many of them see in Starmer's appeal for dignity and respect a chance to reinvigorate British progressivism, one that focuses on fair wages, climate-responsive policies, and a renewed culture of civic duty. Yet even they acknowledge that translating these ideals into policies will test the government's political will and administrative capacity. As the conference unfolded, the theme of decency versus division began to trend online, drawing both praise and ridicule. Some commentators applauded the Prime Minister for emphasising values over slogans. Others criticised the speech as too abstract for voters struggling with rising bills and uncertain job markets. This digital debate illustrated the widening gap between the language of political vision and the daily concerns of citizens. When Starmer concluded his address, shaking hands with party leaders and grassroots activists, the hall erupted in applause. But even in that moment of unity, there was an unspoken recognition that the hard work had only just begun. The applause was a gesture of support, but also a collective acknowledgement of the scale of the challenge ahead. As evening descended on Liverpool and the conference lights glowed against the darkening sky, one message from the Prime Minister's speech lingered: that Britain faces not just a policy debate, but a moral choice. The road taken now, he argued, will define the country's future character. For viewers and voters across the nation, this raises a pressing question. Can political rhetoric be transformed into tangible change? And can a call for decency overcome the allure of grievance-driven politics? Starmer's words framed the struggle as a contest for the very soul of the country. Whether that framing resonates beyond the walls of the conference hall remains to be seen. In the days and weeks ahead, his government will be judged on its ability to translate this vision into practical steps, from tackling the cost of living crisis to restoring public trust in institutions. Every policy decision, every legislative move will now be viewed through the lens of this defining choice: decency or division, renewal or decline. For now, the speech in Liverpool stands as a pivotal moment, not for what it has already changed, but for the debate it has set in motion. It has reminded Britain of its past trials and its capacity for collective renewal, while also confronting the present reality of political polarisation. In the end, the Prime Minister's closing words, his pledge that at the end of the hard road lies a fairer country, a land of dignity and respect, were both a promise and a challenge. They encapsulated his hope for a Britain that reclaims unity and purpose, but also underscored the distance still to travel to make that vision real. For the people of Britain, the fork in the road that Starmer described is not a distant metaphor. It is a choice that will affect communities, jobs, and the national identity itself. In Liverpool today, the Prime Minister asked his country to confront that choice with courage. The question now is whether the nation will follow him down the long, difficult road he has laid out.
Now, it's an urgent task. We can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline. A country proud of its values, in control of its future, or one that succumbs against the grain of our history to the politics of grievance. It is a test, a fight for the soul of our country, every bit as big as rebuilding Britain after the war, and we must all rise to this challenge. Yet we need to be clear that our path, the path of renewal, it's long, it's difficult, it requires decisions that are not cost-free or easy, decisions that will not always be comfortable for our party. Yet at the end of this hard road, there will be a new country, a fairer country, a land of dignity and respect,